As Prabhu said, and I talked a little bit about it yesterday, so hopefully I won't be saying the same thing again. But I joined Srila Prabhupada in his travels in 1972. And of course, for anyone, when Prabhupada was here, to become his personal servant, as he said, was an amazing thing, and something, of course, I never even imagined. I actually did see, when it was just a few months before, so I became his servant, it was August 72. I saw him, I met him for the first time, actually, close up, a few months prior, from New Vrindavan, where I was doing service, New Vrindavan, West Virginia, which is outside of Pittsburgh, about an hour and a half. We drove across country from Pittsburgh, PA, to Los Angeles, California. Me and Kirtananda Swami and a few God brothers, we got Brahmin initiation from Srila Prabhupada. So at that time, I got to spend 5 days and go on morning walks with him and go in the garden in the afternoon. And there would just be a few devotees, 5, 6 devotees. I got to be one of them because I was with a sannyasi, a swami, so that was like a ticket. Otherwise, Prabhupada had thousands of devotees, but they're not going on the morning walks. So going in the garden, reading the Krishna book, but this was what happened. And during those days was the first time I saw Prabhupada had a personal servant. And I thought, what an amazing thing. Someone actually gets to take care of him personally. And I would watch him. I wasn't even watching Srila Prabhupada, I was watching his servant. And I would see Prabhupada would come into the temple room. Of course, he would greet the deities, offer his dandavats. And then he would go to the back and sit on the Vyasasana, and his servant would help him up to the Vyasasana. He would take his cane, and he would open the eyeglass case and give him his glasses for reading Srimad Bhagavatam. So all these things, it just fascinated me to think that this pure devotee of Krishna, this person from the spiritual world, and someone's taking care of him. I never imagined that it was something I would do. I never thought, I want to do that. I was just in New Vrindavan milking cows, milking cows at the time. So I didn't think that, but to see him, I thought, what an amazing thing that somebody gets to do that. And I was so fascinated by his servant, who was my age. He was like, at the time, 21, 22 years old. I was watching him. And this went on maybe 1-2 days. I was watching a little too much. And one day he saw me looking at him, the servant, and he like looked at me like, what are you looking at me? You know? So then I kind of started looking at Prabhupada again. But this is our process too. I had to become the servant of the servant of the servant. This is what we always say. But like I say, I never imagined that it was something that would be in my future. But as it turned out, July, 3 months later, Prabhupada came to New Vrindavan. And didn't have a servant. Anyway, as I described last night, day before Prabhupada left, Kirtananda said, "You want to be a servant?" I said, "Yes." Anyone would have said yes. And the next morning I left with him. The first place we went was Pittsburgh, which was just an hour and a half away. And I had no idea what I was even going to be doing. Well, I had a little idea, but actually no idea. There were no retreats, there were no classes, how to become a servant of the pure devotee. Now, in our ISKCON society, we have classes for everything. We have our Bhakti Shastra, Bhakti Vaibhava, we have Japa retreats, we have classes, how to become a GBC, how to become an initiating guru, how to become a disciple. Everything there's training for now in our society as it's grown. But at that time, only classes we had was Srimad Bhagavatam in the morning and Bhagavad Gita class in the evening. Otherwise, all day long, if you were in the city like here, you would be chanting Hare Krishna in the street for 8-10 hours a day and distributing books. New Vrindavan, you worked on the farm all day, baling hay, milking cows, mending fences, all these things, that's what you did. So when I joined, he had a secretary, Prabhupada had a secretary, a servant, and his Sanskrit editor. And they were all different people. One person couldn't do everything. So he traveled generally with these 3 different disciples. So his secretary, he was the first one. He came up to me and he just said, "So you're Prabhupada's servant?" He said, "So," and this was my class. He said, "Prabhupada rings the bell, you go in the room." He said, "When Prabhupada's in the car, you sit next to him." He said, "When Prabhupada's on the airplane, you sit next to him." And that was it. That was my instruction, how to be Prabhupada's personal servant. And then he said, "Do you know how to use a tape recorder?" Of course they said, "Yes." That's like asking these boys, "Do you know how to use a smartphone?" You know, right? We all knew what to do in those times. So I said, "Yes." He said, "When Prabhupada speaks," he says, "you record whatever he says on the morning walk." And that was it. So we go to Pittsburgh and I'm just sitting next to Prabhupada now. And what do? You just have your hand in your bead bag all the time, like you're chanting Hare Krishna because you're next to Prabhupada. We get to Pittsburgh, and at that time Prabhupada had a sitting room and a bedroom. And for me, I found out, well, I just would sit in the bedroom because Prabhupada rings the bell, you go in the room. But that means you have to be close enough to hear a bell ring. So you're never very far away. And as I would find out over time, 24 hours a day, you had to be within 20 feet of where Srila Prabhupada was. You didn't go anywhere. You didn't say, "I decide to take a japa walk and go down the street, go to..." No, you had to stay in your room 24 hours a day. Prabhupada rang the bell, you had to answer it. That was your service. So he's in his sitting room in the afternoon, and I'm looking in his suitcase. I'm in the bedroom and I'm looking in his suitcase. There wasn't that much in there. There was a few dhotis, kurtas, a sweater, his coat, his cooker, which a brass cooker was in there. And I'm looking in there and I hear the bell ring. That was the first time. So I'm right next door. I run into the room, I offer obeisances. And I sit up, and he's looking at me. And I'm looking at him. I didn't know what I was supposed to do, and I said, "Yes, Prabhupada." I said, "What can I do?" He said, "Nothing. I just wanted to see how fast you were." And I was filled with anxiety. And as soon as he said that, and he smiled and looked at me, and all the anxiety just went away. Just like that, the first time he rang the bell. He knew exactly what to do. And now we're still looking at each other. I said, "Anything else?" He said, "No, that's all." He literally rang the bell to see if I would answer it, how good I was going to be. That was the first thing. And again, we're looking. I said, "Should I go now?" He said, "Okay." So then I went back into the room. So I passed the test, the very first ring the bell test. I passed the test. So then from there we went to Dallas. So this was my first time on an airplane. And I'm sitting next to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada, he was always wonderful. But there were different. There was Prabhupada in the temple, And then there was Prabhupada when he wasn't in the temple. And that was fun. Because in the temple, just like you see we come in the temple, everybody knows, everybody devotees. Prabhupada would come in, everybody offers obeisances. And as Prabhupada even said one day, when he was leaving his quarters, and he was walking out the door, and he said, now I'm going to be Acharya. So there was Prabhupada in his room. He was just a devotee of Krishna, just like all of us. We just want to be devotee of Krishna. All these titles, you might be a temple president, you could be big book distributor, you may be temple commander, but what are any of us? Dāsa, Anu, Dāsa, we're all just servants of Krishna. Yeah? And Prabhupada was servant of Krishna, servant of a spiritual master, but he had his service. He was founder Acharya of ISKCON. So when he would come into the temple, he said, now I'm the Acharya. And he would walk into the temple. So then we get to Dallas. Now I've never done anything. I'm supposed to cook for him, cook his lunch, and I have to give him massage twice a day. And I've never given anyone, I don't know anything about massage, and I've never even touched another man in my life. So this was a challenge. Although with Prabhupada, that wasn't the challenge. The challenge was, can I do it? So we get to Dallas, and Prabhupada had a whole apartment in Dallas. I had my own little servant's room. There was a kitchen. He had a sitting room. He had a bedroom. And he said, okay, he's going to show me how to cook and how to massage. Prabhupada didn't waste time. So we go into the kitchen. And first thing he does now, we both put on gumshoes, because I'm going to give him a massage on the kitchen floor while we see his cooker on the stove in the kitchen, because he has to show me how to use his cooker, which that also required a little expertise. Some of his servants didn't know how to use the cooker. Somehow or other, Prabhupada showed me in 3 days in a row. So we start out, now we're in our gumshoes because massage is going to happen. And this cooker, you can get, where is my book in here? Is this in a box of books somewhere here? You can show you you can pass around a book and show them what the cooker looks like, for those that don't know what a cooker looks like. There's pictures Vishaka could find. So he said, okay. He starts cutting vegetables. He said, you wash the rice. So there's this little pot that sits in the top of the cooker. And I put the rice in. And he said, go wash the rice. So he's at one end of the counter, kitchen counter. I'm at the other where the sink is. And he's cutting vegetables to put into the cooker. And I'm washing the rice like we learned. You know how to wash the rice? You rinse it 3 times, right? You pour it out, do it again. So I was trained that way. So I'm at the sink and I fill it up with water and I swish it around. It becomes all cloudy. I pour the water out. And then I put water in again. And he's just 5 feet away. And I'm just ready to turn it, to rinse it again. He said, what are you doing? I said, I'm washing the rice 3 times, Prabhupada. He said, once is enough. So that was the first thing. Over the course of time I was with him, all these rules that I had been told were mandatory things. He shattered one after another. His milk, boiling hot milk. He came to my room one evening. Every night, Prabhupada had hot milk. Every night. With sugar, little sugar. And he came into my room one evening and he was just pouring his hot milk. He said, put honey in it. He never asked for honey. He said, put honey in it. And immediately I said, well, Prabhupada, they say, Ayurvedically, they say honey, you can't heat it, it becomes poison. And I said, well, Prabhupada, they say, honey, it becomes toxic. He said, just put the honey in it. So this is how he dealt with me. And he dealt with everyone as individuals, huh? Jamuna, when she, way back in 1967, when she joined in San Francisco, huh? And Prabhupada had her help cook immediately. Imagine, she helped cook. She became the premier cook in the whole society. Right from the very beginning, Prabhupada knew. And he had her come in the kitchen for her sister's wedding. They were cooking for it. And everything she would do, Prabhupada kept telling her, wash your hands, wash your hands. So he taught her in another kind of specific way. With me, he was very easygoing. He knew I was easygoing. And he trained me in that way. But anyway, we get back to the cooker. See, the cooker had three levels, 3 tiers. The bottom, you would cook the dal in it. And then there were holes in the next thing, and that's the center where you would put your cut up vegetables. And then in the top was the rice in the pot with 2 parts water. So everything else, the dal would boil on the bottom, and those next 2 sections, things would steam. So you're steaming the vegetables, you're steaming the rice. What was the tricky part was, now these 3 days we're in the same, he's taking massage in the kitchen. That never happened again. Sometimes the kitchen could be in a different building. You're giving him massage in one place, and this cooker's on the stove. The entire massage, which didn't have a time frame. It could be an hour, 15 minutes. It could be an hour and a half. It could be an hour and 45 minutes. And all that time, this cooker's sitting on a stove with a flame. Imagine steaming something for an hour and a half. So the trick was to learn where to put that flame. It was very low flame because it took a long time. So that I learned. He showed me that over the 3 days. And then I had to massage him, which again, I didn't know anything about that. The day before, I watched one devotee give him massage. It was Sudama. And I thought, well, that's good. He's here. We'll do massage every day. And I'm watching him, and he's rubbing his head and rubbing his back and from one place to the other, you know. And I was happy that I didn't have to do it. And then he completed the massage, and he offered his obeisances. He said, yes, Prabhupada, please give me blessings. Now I'm going to Japan. And as soon as he said it, I thought, oh no. So 24 hours later, the oh no came to pass. And what I saw him do, and I just put a little sandalwood oil in the palm of my hand and rubbing his head. And he didn't say anything. I'm just trying to do what I saw him do and rubbing and shriveling. And you do it until he goes like this. Then you go to the next spot. That was his back. And I put the mustard oil in there, and basically doing the same thing, just rubbing, pushing and pushing. So from one spot to the next, I moved. And then his legs are out, more mustard oil, and massaging his leg. And as I'm massaging it, I'm just kind of like this, and then like this. And he grabbed my leg, and he said, like this. He started massaging my leg. I think I'm the only person that got massaged by Srila Prabhupada. So that went on. That's what I did for 2.5 years, every day for 2.5 years. Get everything in the cooker, and you go in and start giving him massage. So I did that for a year. And after a year of doing it, and every time I would do it, massage his head, he'd go like this, massage his back, and he'd go like this, and that was when you go to the next spot. So after a year, thinking, I know what I'm doing. And I massaged his head, and he didn't go like this. But I thought I did it for the right amount of time. You know, I noticed. And I massaged his back. And I didn't wait for him to go like this. And I went to the sides. So I did this one day. Then I did it another day. Then the third day came. Did I tell you about threes? Three is a very important number. Vedic culture, three, very important. So the third day, and I'm massaging, and I figure, everything's good. And I massaged his head. And then I took my hands off. And he said, you massage me until I tell you to stop. Not until you tell you to stop. So that was the end of that. And that's what it was like to be with Prabhupada. We talked yesterday about being the puppet, an instrument. You couldn't do anything unless he told you to do it. I couldn't go anywhere 24 hours a day in the room. Sleeping, you're there in the room. He might call you 1 o'clock in the morning. Never did. A few times he did. Once he did it in Hawaii, and I was right in the room next door. This is when he did his translating. Midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and we're all sleeping very nicely. Sometimes I was so close, I could hear him. I could hear him with the dictaphone machine, pushing up, down, pressing play, listening to what he just said. If he didn't like it, he would rewind it and would record something over it. Imagine, I could hear him translating Srimad Bhagavatam. I would wake up to it, hear his voice. So one night, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, it's in Hawaii, and I hear the bell ring. And I go in, I offer obeisances. And I look, and the dictaphone machine, there was a little reel of tape, small reel. The tape was all over the desk. Like, anyone, if you're old enough who knows cassette tapes, you'll know what that can be like. It was just like, and I went in, I offered obeisances, and I looked up, and I looked at him, and he looked at me. He said, I don't know what happened. The tape was everywhere. He said, can you fix it? I was good. We all knew what we do with cassette tapes. You put the little pencil in there, you roll it all back into the cassette thing. So this wasn't a cassette tape, but it was a reel. I said, yes, and I grabbed the reel, and I just put something in there that fit in there, and I literally put the tape on the floor in his room. And I just walked around and slowly just went this way and that way and got the tape. And he's sitting behind the desk and he's just watching me go back and forth, back and forth. And I got it all back into the reel, set it up. He said, okay, go take rest. And then I went back and take rest. There was one time in Los Angeles. Prabhupada stayed there one time for 2 months. Every year he would stay there for a month or so in the springtime. Los Angeles is very nice weather most of the year, or like springtime most of the year. Prabhupada liked it there, and that was the world headquarters. People would come from all over. Prabhupada would do initiations there. New Dwarka, Los Angeles. So we were there so long that even though I didn't leave my room during the day, going to classes and going in the morning walk, I got to know different devotees, different men devotees. And we became friends. And they said to me, why don't you come to Mongol Artik? And I said, well, I have to be in my room. They said, did Prabhupada call you that time of the morning? I said, well, no, never has. Well, why don't you come to Mongol Artik? Rukmini, Dwarkadish, Jagannath, Subhadra, Baladev, beautiful Gaurnatai deities, Bhardaraj leading Kirtan, Parikshit leading Kirtan, Vyasaki, all big, they were the big Kirtan leaders then. Why don't you come? I said, well, if he rings the bell, I have to be there. Does he ever ring? I said, well, no, you know. Not usually the morning walk is the first time that I have to do anything. Anyway, they convinced me, come to Mangalartik. So the next morning I go to Mangalartik. And I'm in the temple room with my friends, you know, we're chanting samsara prayer, and all of a sudden, Prajumna, he was Sanskrit editor, Prabhupada wants to see you. I thought, oh no, I knew right away. Whenever they said Prabhupada wants to see you, that's not a good thing. He never called people in to tell you you were very, very good. He's a spiritual master. If he wants to see you, he's going to chastise you. Prabhupada wants to see you now. And usually, and I said this many, Prabhupada wants to see you when he's really mad, is usually what would say after that. He wants to see you when he's really mad. I knew he was not going to be good. So I ran out of the temple room. I go upstairs, go into Prabhupada's room, and I'm offering obeisances. He doesn't wait to look at you. And he said, I've been ringing this bell for hours. I was there just 10 minutes before, but that's hours. When I say he had like Lord Brahma's time frame, you know, 1 minute's like 100 years to him, if he has to wait a minute. Where were you? I sat up, I said, Prabhupada, I told him. I said, Prabhupada, I went to Mangalartik. You have no business going to Mangalartik, he said. He said, your business is to be in your room. What if I need something? He said, you have to be in your room 24 hours a day. I said, yes, Prabhupada. So that was the last time I went to Mangalartik. Well, not in the last 50 years, but while I was with Prabhupada, that was the last. I was in Maya because I went to Mangalartik. You don't go to Mangalartik, you're in Maya. I was in Maya because I went. So this is Krishna consciousness. It's understanding what you're supposed to do all the time. How it is you're supposed to serve Krishna. And when you were with Prabhupada, he lets you know that your business was to be servant to the servant, completely surrendered. Not part-time. There's no part-time surrender. That's not surrender. That's just business. Surrender means 24 hours surrender. He called me in. Call my secretary. And I would always go back in with whoever he called. Because that was your seva, that was your service. And it also, you wanted to know what was going on. Call my secretary. I called, I said, Prabhupada wants to see you. So then we both go in together. And Prabhupada looked at him. He said, you don't move a pin on my desk from here to here without asking me. That's what it was like to be with Srila Prabhupada. You had to completely surrender. Whatever he wanted, that's what you did. What he didn't want, you didn't do. So it was very wonderful service, ecstatic service. But bliss, ecstasy doesn't come without sacrifice. Tapasya, like Lord Brahma, tapa. First thing he heard, you have to do tapasya. Krishna consciousness, you have to surrender to the spiritual master's instructions. I read all the time. Only way to make progress in Krishna consciousness is through service. That doesn't mean just lip service. It means doing something. This is what's required. Back in those days, I was talking, where we're staying, I was talking to one Indian man. He was asking me what it was like back then, 50 years ago, 55 years ago. He says, what's changed? Whenever I hear that question, I don't even know what to say. I mean, everything is changed. In those days, We all lived in the temple. Now, 98% all congregational members. At that time, 98% were ashram devotees. Mangalartik every morning, chanting your 16 rounds, going out on Harinam. We traveled for 3 months or so. We were traveling Australia, we went to England, we went to Europe, we went to USA. In Australia, so many devotees. But local people, not so many. And he says, well, how do we make them devotees? I said, well, back when we became devotees, I said, we met the devotees on the street, Harinam Sankirtan. It was always the process. You saw the devotees chanting. I joined because I saw the devotees chanting in the street and went up to them. What are you doing? And they tell you. And book distribution. These were the way everyone came back in those days. Harinam and book distribution. Prabhupada said, this is our process. This is the program. Very simple. He said, we're simple devotees. We do kirtan. This is our business, kirtan, but not a show. He even said, not the road show, not a road show. Simple kirtan people. So these things we saw with Prabhupada again and again. This is how he started this whole Krishna consciousness movement, was distributing his books. And then, of course, I wasn't going to say anything here about Boston, Prabhupada arriving, because next week you're going to hear that again and again and again from different devotees and how they saw the early ISKCON days. So I wasn't going to get into the Prabhupada arriving at the Boston Harbor 60 years ago, after great, great difficulty. I know devotees sometimes will say, people think you come to Krishna consciousness and all your problems are solved, no more suffering. Prabhupada suffered so much. We know on the Jaladuta, 2 heart attacks, just on the Jaladuta. Then when he came, the Bowery, living on the Bowery, he did. So much difficulty. But it's through that sacrifice, through that difficulty, great progress can be made and great rewards can come from Krishna when you show that sincerity. Krishna wants to see our sincerity. And when you're with the pure devotee, when you're with Srila Prabhupada, you get to see that all the time. It requires sincerity, not part-time. He didn't want part-time, all the time. This was our business. So yesterday we were talking, those that you know, we were talking a bit about prasadam, Srila Prabhupada and prasadam. And that was always one of the most, for devotees, one of the most important types of service is taking prasadam. Prabhupada himself, he loved prasadam, breakfast, lunch, evening time. In the evening, he would call me. Breakfast was always fruits and maybe milk or yogurt, a little sweet. If it's cold out, halava. Otherwise, just the fruits. Lunchtime, in that cooker every day, rice, chapatis, dal, 3-4 sabjis. Bitter melon, fried bitter melon like that. Every day. I did that every day. And then in the evening, he could call you into his room and say, tonight make puris and sabji. Sometimes he would say potato, eggplant, sabji. I was with him for 1 week. And he called me in the room and he said, tonight, he said, you can make me puris and chips. I said, yes, Prabhupada. Of course, I went back to the kitchen and the puri dough, I knew what to do, but chips, I'd never made chips before. So I peeled the potato and I started slicing it real thin. Potato chips, And I fry them in the ghee, put a little salt on them. A little puri. one puri on the plate and the chips and his hot milk. And I bring it into the room, offer obeisances and put it down on the table and sit up. He looks at me. He said, they're not chips. What are they? Chips, Prabhupada. I said, never mind. So I go back out and I roll another puri. I bring in the puri. And he said, oh, they're good. I didn't know. Prabhupada was from India. What are chips? Fries, French fries, fish and chips. The British chips. He's talking British chips, so he wanted me to make French fries. But I didn't know that. I didn't know that until I started writing my book 20 years later, and it finally hit me what chips were. Because I thought they were potato chips. So I made him these nice potato chips, like Lay's potato chips thing we made. He never, 2.5 years, he never asked for chips again from me. He asked for many things, but never asked for chips. I think I failed that. But he said they were good. But that's what it was like to be with him. Never knew, but always very wonderful. So I'll tell you, I know we don't have lots of time, and I got here a little late. I'm sorry for that. But I'll tell you one very nice story. So this was 1975. At that time, Prabhupada, he traveled around the world in 2 months. In 2 months, he went to, I think, 14 different temples. That's what it was like to be with Srila Prabhupada. Always you're traveling, always different time zones. And there was no such thing as jet lag. Because Prabhupada, as soon as he arrived somewhere, he set his watch to the local time, and boom, everything's going to go on just like the last place you were at. You could be in a plane for 20 hours from India, arriving in New York City, 10-hour difference, right? Time zone, 10-hour difference. So you get there, well, it's the other way around, from New York to India. You arrive 2 o'clock in the morning in Delhi after 20 hours in airplanes and airports. And he'd get to Delhi and he'd set his watch. You get to the temple or wherever he stayed, and 3 in the morning, 3 hours later, it's the morning walk. Didn't matter that you just spent 24 hours in airplanes. The morning walk is there. Prabhupada immediately just adjusted to that schedule. We were 20, in our 20s. We found it very difficult. But he did it. Never said jet lag, didn't exist. Now we all say it all the time. Jet lag. I'll be here in a couple of days after I recover. And he did it for 10 years in order to make all of us devotees. 10 years traveled around the world. So on this particular trip, he went to Mexico City. There was on one of the few places they translated, Vidayananda Maharaj translated it into Spanish for the local Mexican devotees. And one lecture, as Prabhupada often did, he talked about how important it is. This human form of life only has one purpose, God realization. 8,400,000 species of life. Only the human form of life, one can become Krishna conscious. So he would talk like that. How important it is to utilize this life. So at the time of death, you remember Krishna. So at the end of class, one woman, older woman, raised her hand. And this was nice in Mexico. In the US, everybody was always just teenagers, 20 years old, like that. Here was a woman, she was over 40. That was very unusual. And she raised her hand, and in Spanish, she asked Prabhupada, she said, what if we don't remember Krishna at the time of death, but we remember you? Prabhupada went, that's all right. All we know about Prabhupada is Krishna. It's all he did. Krishna, 24 hours a day. Krishna. All he wanted to do was give Krishna to everyone. And that's what he did. Literally, he gave Krishna to all of us. So then we left Mexico City, morning, 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm flying to Caracas, Venezuela. And one Mataji there in Mexico City, she made Prabhupada one of his favorite preps, muri, puffed rice. Yeah? Puffed rice, I mentioned that last night. One of Prabhupada's favorite preparations, puffed rice. And it was just like a bowl of puffed rice, and it was wrapped up in aluminum foil in a brown paper bag. And she handed it to me, we went on the flight. So we're certain, Prabhupada was very regulated. Even on the airplane there was regulation. So we get in the plane, we sit down. Where did Prabhupada sit in the plane? The window seat. Always sat in the window seat. Wasn't sometimes the aisles. Always sat at the window seat. And the servant, where am I sitting? Right next to him. That was my service. I learned that the first day. You sit next to him. The others, they didn't want to sit next. Because you sit next to him. What can you do? You only have two choices. What are they? You're either chanting on your beads or you're reading one of his books. You can't do anything else because you're next to Prabhupada. Not like you're just going to sit there and read a Time magazine, put headphones on, listen to a movie. No, you can't do any of those things. And he's not having conversations with you, so you've got to have your hand in your bead bag, like this all the time. So then the plane takes off. After 5 minutes or so, what happens? Fasten seatbelt light goes off. What does that mean? Always meant the same thing every flight I've ever been on. What does it mean? Prasadam. Prasadam. As soon as that light goes out, prasadam, because then you can put the table down. Prabhupada liked prasadam. Anyone here like prasadam? We're here for the... Prabhupada said, most of you have come for the prasadam. So, I put my table down, I open up the bag with the little aluminum foil thing. It's puffed rice, that's all that's in there. Puffed rice and peanuts. With a chance. Cooked in what? Ghee. Cooked in ghee. You're learning. Cooked in ghee. And I put it in front of him, and Prabhupada picks up. He ate so nicely. He said, put up. Somehow he could get everything into his mouth without ever touching his mouth. It's a great art to be able to do that. To eat with your right hand only and not touch your mouth while you're doing it. Not just plus things in there. So he ate half of it. And then he looked at me, okay. Why did he just eat half of it? Because I'm sitting next to him, and next to me is his secretary. He has to feed us. We're his responsibility. We're his servants. Like it says, you don't eat unless the spiritual master tells you you can eat. But he took care of us. He takes care of us. He sees that we all get fed. So he ate half of it and said, okay. You could have finished it. You can eat this much puffed rice. You never get full. It's not like, I'm full, I had so much puffed rice. But he gave it to us because he's a devotee. Huh? Might be your spiritual master. It might be from the spiritual world. But he's Krishna conscious. He takes care of everyone. So then I move it over to my plate, my table, and I separate it into two parts because I have someone sitting next to me. And I rip the aluminum foil and I give half to Paramahamsa Swami. And I have the other half in front of me. So this is 1975, going from Mexico City to Caracas. Nobody's ever seen Hare Krishnas before. We're in the plane, shaved heads, bright tilak, bright clothes on, and we're eating. No one brings food onto the plane. They get it given to them. And we start eating. So we weren't as, just toss it in, we're eating the puffed rice. So as we're eating, this stewardess is walking down from the first class area, walking down into economy. And of course she sees us funny looking people from Mars. And she stops right in front of us, right in front of Paramahamsa, who's on the aisle. And she stops and looks, and then she takes her hand, she puts it in my plate, not his on the end. She puts it in and grabs a handful of puffed rice and throws it in her mouth. And she looks at me and says, "Oh, this is very good. What is it?" I said, "It's puffed rice." She says, "Well, why are you all eating, you funny-looking people? What are you doing?" I said, "Well, we're all vegetarian." She says, "Oh, okay." Paramahamsa, he's just eating, doesn't even pay any attention. Prabhupada, he's just looking forward. Neither is he paying any attention to this woman that took food out of my plate. Not just food, Prabhupada's Maha Prasadam. We would fight for this, Prabhupada's remnants. Every day I distributed Prabhupada's remnants 3 times a day. People would run over one another to get it, push people out of the way. I had a godbrother offer me $100 once. "Give me the whole plate, I'll give you $100. I said, "No, not for sale. It would be much more than $100 if I was going to give you the whole plate." And she took it. A professional person took food out of my plate and ate it. So she said, "Well, would you like anything else?" So now I turned to Prabhupada, who doesn't respond to her. And I said, "Prabhupada, would you like anything else?" He said, "Hot milk." Garam doodh. Hot milk. So I said, "We'll all have hot milk." Whatever Prabhupada does, we do. Not everything, but when it came to fun things, we did. Waking up 1 o'clock in the morning, that we didn't do. But if it was prasadam, whatever he's eating, we'll have it too. So I said, "We'll all have hot milk." She said, "Would you like anything else?" She said, "I can go in the first class." She said, "They get you fruit, cheese, bread." Again, I turned to Prabhupada because he's not talking to her. Because he's sannyasi. Huh? He's sannyasi. "Anything else, Prabhupada? Would you like?" "Yes, yes." He said, "Fruit, cheese, bread." She said, "Okay." She runs up to the first class section. And I turned to Prabhupada. I said, "Prabhupada, that was amazing." Meaning she took his Mahaprasadam. Prabhupada said, "Women have a natural tendency to serve." He didn't respond to what I said. He responded to what she was willing to do, that she was going to take care of us. He said, "Women have natural tendency to serve." Women, you should never feel bothered you're in women's body. You have the proper understanding, service. Everything Krishna conscious means service. Doesn't mean anything else. It means you serve. Yeah. Men, many times, they like to be served. Yeah. So she went up there and she comes back after 10 minutes or so and she gives us fruit all cut up nicely, slices of cheese, all this. I'd never seen anything like that before. My whole life, no one's ever taken food off of my plate, except my wife sometimes. She does. We're experiencing jet lag. We're going through jet lag now. But, so I told that story. That happened 50 years ago. 50 years ago that happened. Back in March. 50 years ago. So 20 years later, I'm in New Dwarka, and I tell that story. 1995 it was, 20 years later. And I gave class, almost 2-hour class. And then I'm ready to get up at the end of the class, and the devotee comes up to me, he said, "Can I tell you a story?" And I'm like, "Okay." He said, I did traveling Sankirtan. He said all around Mexico, South America. He was Mexican devotee. He said, and we would go out into the country, villages, little towns, little villages, in jeeps. He said, because sometimes even the roads, not very good, just stone, mud, like that. So he said we had, 3, 4 jeeps, the different devotees. We'd go into the town square, do Harinam Sankirtan. And then we'd get back into the jeeps and we'd drive through the different roads and stop at people's houses, farmhouses, ranches, whatever, and distribute books. And he said, I was in Brazil, in the rainforest of Brazil. He said, and we went to this one town, little town. He said, then we got in our jeeps. He said, we're going to the different houses distributing books. And I stopped in front of this one house. He said, and I got out and I got my books and knock on the door. And woman answers. And she says, Hare Krishna, in the rainforest of Brazil. Hare Krishna, she says. And she invites him in. And he said, you're a devotee. She said, yes. And he goes and pictures Prabhupada, Krishna, Panchatattva on the wall, got a little altar. So he couldn't figure out how this woman in the middle of nowhere became a devotee. And he said, well, how did you become a devotee? And she said, well, I used to be a stewardess on the airline. She said, and I met the devotees on the plane. And then later on, met the devotees on she's a stewardess. So she's in the airport and she got a book. So this was the woman who took the puffed rice off of my plate in the middle of the rainforest. So this is the potency of Srila Prabhupada. And that potency is still here in ISKCON. All it requires is that we surrender and just want to serve the spiritual master according to his instructions. And if you know his instructions, you follow his instructions very carefully, you can have the potency to make very nice devotees in Krishna consciousness. So I think it's about 7:45 now, so we have a few minutes. We can go to about 8 o'clock. If anyone has any questions. And I do believe, I think I'm supposed to be here tomorrow morning for Srimad Bhagavatam class in the morning. If any of you are in the neighborhood, you can come, please come. But now, if anyone has any questions. Yes. Prabhu.
Prabhu, could you speak about Srimad Bhagavatam, because today's Bhadra Purnima, about Srila Prabhupada?
Very good. Today's Bhadra Purnima, so distributing Srimad Bhagavatams. Okay, this probably will be the one and only question. One of the things, when I became his servant...
We are not able to hear the devotee is asking the question. We are just hearing your answer.
So he said today is Bhadra Purnima. So Bhadra Purnima is if you distribute Srimad Bhagavatam set on this day, a very auspicious day, and pretty much guaranteed to go back home, back to Godhead, by buying or distributing Srimad Bhagavatam on this day. So that's today, Bhadra Purnima. So, when I became his servant, one of the things that shocked me, I found amazing, was generally in the afternoon, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, if I would be doing things in Prabhupada's room, he was reading his books. His books. He'd be reading one day Nectar of Devotion, another day Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna book, Bhagavad Gita. He was reading them. He translated them. So when I first saw it, I found that was amazing, because these were his books, but he was reading them. He didn't have a legal pad looking for things, seeing if corrections. He was reading them. So anyway, months went by, 6 months go by, there is his servant, and he rings the bell. And I go in, offer obeisances. Anyone have a book? You have a Bhagavatam with you?
We have it right here.
Or Gita, any book. Thank you. So he rings the bell. So what happens when he rings the bell? I go in the room. That's my seva, go in the room. So he rings the bell, go in, I offer obeisances, and I sit up. And he's got his reading glasses on, and he's got a Bhagavad Gita in front of him. And he looks at me. He said, this Bhagavad Gita is so nice. He said, if you just read this one book, you can become Krishna conscious. He said, everything is in this book. He said, if you read and understand, he said, you can become Krishna conscious. You don't need to read so many books. He said, just this one book. If you read, you can become Krishna conscious. And then put his head back down and continued to read. So I offered obeisances and left. So about 6 months go by. I was with him a long time. 6 months go by, it's the afternoon. I see every day he's reading his books or chanting japa. Everything he asked us to do, he was doing it. 3 Gayatris every day, chanting his rounds, reading his books, preaching. Everything he wanted us to do. He set the example. He's the Acharya. So now, a year goes by. The afternoon, he rings the bell. I come in, I offer obeisances. He's reading Nectar of Devotion. And he looks at me. If you just read this one book, he said, you can be Krishna conscious. He said, this book is so nice. You don't have to read hundreds of books. Just this one book. If you read it, you can be Krishna conscious. Everything is here in this book. And then he put his head down, continued reading. I offered obeisances, then went back to my room. Another 6 months or so goes by. Afternoon, he rings the bell. I go in, offer obeisances. He's reading Krishna book. I read Krishna book. He's reading Krishna book. And he looks at me. He said, this book, wonderful book. He said, everything is here to become Krishna conscious. If you just read this one book, you can become Krishna conscious. You don't have to read hundreds of books. He said the same thing each time. Believe me, this is what he called me in. Just this one book, he said, you read it, you can become Krishna conscious. But he kept looking at me. He didn't put his head back down. He was looking at me. You don't even have to read the whole book. If you just read one chapter of this book, he said, you can become Krishna conscious. And I don't say a word. I'm just, yes, Prabhupada. But he kept looking at me. He didn't put his head back down. He's still looking at me. You don't even have to read the whole chapter. He said, just one page. If you read one page of this book, you can become Krishna conscious. And he kept looking at me. You don't even have to read the whole page. He said one line. If you read one line in this book, you can become Krishna conscious. You don't even have to read the whole line. He said one word. If you read one word in this book, you can become Krishna conscious. Because Krishna's in every word. So, Prabhupada's books, literally gives you Krishna. Huh? Today, do you have the books on the altar today?
We have
You-
we have the books that you can sign and give if anybody sponsors.
Yes, yes, absolutely. We can do that. So, these are Prabhupada's books. Every one of his books. I remember when different cantos would come out, sometimes they would say, Prabhupada, should we distribute the 5th canto? We do that. He said, yes, any book. Any book. So to take one of these books or to sponsor these books, you can help innumerable people become Krishna conscious. Prabhupada said, they just touch the book. He said it can change their life. What to speak of if they read the book, how valuable it is. So today is a very special day. Whenever we have festival days, it increases the amount of the amount of seva you can do on that day. It increases your Krishna consciousness by taking advantage of any festival day. So I know in Vrindavan, they distribute so many sets of Srimad Bhagavatam. People sponsor them to distribute. They get them to put in your home, to put a set of Bhagavatams in your home. You purify your whole household and everyone in it. So anyway, you take advantage of that today, special day. And Prabhu said, anyone takes book today, not that I'm anyone, but if you like, I can sign it. My book is also here for the next week or so while I'm here. That's available. But take advantage. Prabhupada, most important thing he did was translate books. That was the one service his spiritual master gave him. He said, everything else I learned from my father. And this translating of books by Srila Prabhupada was his most important service. Because he said, no matter what else happens, books will be there. He said once, even everything, whole society, temples, everything finished, but he said the books will always be there. So the most important thing, the sound incarnation also there of Krishna. Krishna is in every word. On the airplane one day, Prabhupada was reading his Bhagavad Gita, sitting there by the window. Myself and his Sanskrit editor are next to me, Prajumna. And Prabhupada's at the Gita, and he looked at us. He said, what author do you know reads his books once it's been printed? Of course, it was a rhetorical question. He said, no author does. Once they finish a book, they go on to the next book. He said, but here I am reading this Bhagavad Gita as it is. Why? Of course, and he would answer as we just look, wait for him. He said, because they're not my words, they're Krishna's words. And he said that about his purports. He said, when I read my books, he said, I think so wonderful. How did it happen? Literally, like he didn't do it. He said, it's all Krishna. So please take advantage as much as you can today. Not today, tomorrow, the next day, the next day. The Srimad Bhagavatam, you take it at this time. Very, very wonderful service you can do for yourself and so many others. And so I think we should stop here. It's already 8 o'clock. You've been sitting here very nicely. I think there was even a class earlier. No? Oh, I heard. You've all taken prasadam? No? Oh, so we'll definitely have to stop here so everyone, because that's also a very important service, Krishna prasadam. Prabhupada was at the Manor, devotees were there. George Harrison came. So his coming was always very special, and Prabhupada was always very, very kind to him. So devotees filled the room, big room, Prabhupada's sitting room, half this size. So there's like 20 devotees all living in the temple. And George came. So they knew he was coming, so they made lots of nice prasadam, puris and samosas, and chutney and halava. So as soon as George came, Prabhupada said, bring him prasadam. right there, we're all sitting there, Prabhupada had him bring them prasadam. And George, Prabhupada, I just ate. He said, take prasadam. So of course, you have no choice. Prabhupada tells you what to do, you do it. So he's eating prasadam and he finished. Prabhupada said, bring him more prasadam. He said, no, Prabhupada, I'm full. He said, bring him more prasadam. Prasadam can never hurt you, he said. Prasadam. So George complied. He took more prasadam and ate prasadam. So you all take prasadam to your full satisfaction. Srila Prabhupada
Ki
Jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. I hope to see you again through the course of the week, and especially next weekend for the festival. And Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. So thank you for joining us today here for the one more very extraordinary session on Srila Prabhupada's memory. Yeah, by His Grace Śrutakīrti Prabhu. As Prabhuji mentioned, so we have just few days from now, we are having one of the most important festivals of this decade. We have Srila Prabhupada's Arrival Festival, September 12th, September 13th and September 14th. Prabhuji is here just for that purpose. He has come all the way from India, cancelling all other events, just to give his association to us and also explain and teach about Srila Prabhupada's personality and his teaching and his mood when he was there. So it's a rare occasion for all of us to have 50 Srila Prabhupada disciples here at ISKCON Boston. So he's going to be there personally. So September 12th on the Friday we'll be having from as 5 o'clock to 10 o'clock. We'll be having continuous kirtan. There are many celebrities, including Shri Prahlad Prabhu and many other, the sannyasis would be there. They would be singing. So please join us for this kirtan night. It will be one of the memorable kirtan nights you will ever, visit or you will ever experience that. And then second day, Saturday, we are going to have the parade in the morning. The parade begins 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, it will go until 2 o'clock.